What's up, world? What's up, Zion? It's Prince Easy coming at you again once more. And as usual, I do have a couple slides that I want to share with you, right? And of course, this is not gonna be pertaining to the events that unfolded today, right? As I'm recording this at 8:06 at night, right? But rather, it's gonna be a catch up of what happened yesterday and the things that I left out for the day from the days prior. So before we get to it, I want to issue a disclaimer, right? A fair use disclaimer for all the material that's gonna be shared here in this here post, right? So yeah, let's dive into it. So this happened, right? And of course, the phrasing seems to, I don't know, justify it, right? BBC or CNN rather, like it's like there's a difference. But yeah, gotta have people you trust around you. Yeah, maybe this is why there's so much noise, right? Because somebody's bottom line when it comes to supplying natural gas to the world is gonna be affected. So what is the price of freedom? Because this is what represents, right, the flow of money to our country, right? Well, we fight. Zimbabwe is out here doing it big, right? I don't know what is happening with Namibia and Lesotho, and I am even more shocked for you to tell me that now is the time that you are complaining about this whole ordeal. Weren't you involved in the design? Weren't you consulted? You share the thing, right? So please, right, we don't need another Pakistani India type situation anymore. Settle it. Yeah, we're gonna have a conversation about this down the road. Okay? Yeah, it's just the reality of the type of operation they are expressing, or rather showing us that it's gonna be like. Yeah, people keep shooting themselves in the foot, you know? Shinbit has been busy, right? The Shinbit has been busy. Let's just say that. Well, for all the people, I would have them interview African leaders who wouldn't be Tucker. That's my opinion. Tremendous economic potential. You are harvesting the tremendous potential of Ukraine as we speak, with blood and weaponry, right? We shall see down the road, right? And of course, I hope the Pope is gonna be listening to this one. So as you can see, what we are dealing with, right? We're gonna have lengthy quotation sessions. Let's just call them that. Right? Hey, look at these penguins here. They're eating stones and stuff, right? They're African. So what do you want to do? You want to sail over there and bring sardines in a can? That will help them. Yeah, I hope you are, right? These whistleblowers, they're the ones that got you set up in the first time, right? It was a whole white woman leading the operation. So Are we gonna hear anything about it? That's why the whole psyop died, just like it came out of nowhere. Yeah, we need to talk about the flow of oil to Burundi. That's what the dream, they say. Yeah, right? Just after a few days and stuff. Hmm? And yes, of course, the contrast is mind-boggling. But again, narratives. We live in a world of vain people where what they are on the outside is more important than what they are on the inside. Why? Because most people are trained to look on the outside to gain perspective on what was on the inside. But everything on the outside comes from the inside, so it's confusing. I can't see no lie. Hmm? This is just the reality on the ground, right? When we are talking about ceasefire, 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 right? I don't know if they know about these facts, right? All of those people who say, it is literally impossible to exist in a society today without contributing to that society. The mere fact of existing, that means you are contributing to that society. Now, I don't know what type of idiocracy is going on over there that people have been sold this idea that a person can exist in a country and just leech the country without contributing anything, right? They have made it like everybody who is not basically Caucasian. Hmm? Please, these mere campaigns, they're almost, I don't know, childish. And the whole movie is also sickening and embarrassing. What benefit does Squidward have towards the benefit, of society, rather than shaming humanity for our love of money? Yeah, now this is coming out, right? And of course, they are going to pretend like they didn't know what was going on, or they didn't even allow companies to basically sharing intelligence. They did it together, That's what you need to understand. Hmm? Again, Axios. Who is this Axios? Is it Iranian diplomat, or they're overstepping? Let's just say that with these sources that will remain unnamed. Hmm? So this happened in Russia, right? The heavens does declare his handiwork. Those are the layers. So pertaining to this situation, right? What this character here, I don't know, I don't remember his name. What he said that the purchasing process of the government, is that what you call it, needs to be rectified. And I think it's true because I've seen it before. I remember a couple of weeks back, I was watching one leader visiting a butchery. Na ile butcher ilikuwa ina shida ya maji kwa sababu ya mota ya milioni 50 kama sikosei. Na hela sio kwamba haikuwepo, lakini aidha watu wanaiogopa au watu ambao wanaweza ka authorize matumizi ya pesa ni wachache. For better or for worse, na hisi inahitaji kufanywa marekebisho because inaweza ikafanya system stop. Right? So that is the headline. Europe will find over 15 billion US for weapons for Ukraine, says NATO Secretary General. Right? Asked about how it will be possible to raise 15 billion US Ukraine. Right? Let's talk about where they get this money. Right? As most have suspected that they have actually used many sovereign funds that are in Europe. They have used them, and it would be scary for everybody to, I don't know, audit their sovereign funds that are stored in these countries to find the corruption. Right? The gold no longer there, just replaced with the bricks. Maybe that's the reality we're gonna wake up to. But if I were you, I would do an audit on that. Okay? Because these people are spending money they don't have, and it's amazing. Right? So how will it be possible to raise the 15 billion Ukraine has requested for the Pearl program, through which weapons are purchased in the United States? Rutte promised that the funding would definitely be secured. Right? I'm absolutely confident the money will be there because we all know it is crucial, he said. He described the situation: some countries helping the armed forces of Ukraine by purchasing American weapons, while others are not, as abnormal. At the moment, some allies are doing a lot of allies are doing something. A few are doing nothing, but most are now involved in Pearl. But we need a better burden sharing with NATO. This is what we are working on, Rutte said. He said that the first level of guarantees is the strengthened Ukrainian armies, supported by partner funding. They, the Ukrainians, will be the first in the line of defense. Obviously, for Ukraine, if ever the Russians or anyone would attack Ukraine, first let's slow down. You have been the aggressor for years since your formation. Everywhere, you and the United States, just aggressing the world. So slow your roll with some people attacking you. When they attack you, they will wipe you out. That's what your payment would be for all the crimes that you done did. And if we feel the obligation that to make sure that Ukraine armed forces are in the best possible position to protect themselves, the Secretary General said, well, this is all innocent, right? You can say, maybe you're too biased. Okay. What I want you to ask yourself at the end of this conversation: is this decision going to improve the situation in Ukraine, or is it going to make the people of Ukraine suffer even more? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. It doesn't matter who is sponsoring who and spending how much money to buy what from who. All of that, it doesn't matter, right? Let's just assume the deal goes through and the so-said negotiator accepts this 15 billion and the other billion that we talked about last week, and they supply these weapons that they cannot produce to the Ukrainians. Will that improve the Ukrainian situation? Will that bring safety to Ukraine? That is the question that you need to ask yourself at the end of this whole situation that we are asking here, right? It's not about me, it's not about, I'm just quoting what they're saying, right? And momentarily interjecting and giving my opinion, right? I'm just okay. The second level, Rutte noted, is the coalition of the willing brought together by France and the UK. He refrained from going into details how it would act in the event of an attack, saying only that the coalition aims is not just to ensure that the Ukraine military has everything it needs, right? I don't know what's the difference now between the first, but again, it's an army, right? So it is boots on ground, right? We have had a long conversation about boots on ground in Ukraine and what would that mean for the Russians, right? But also to guarantee the other steps, right? Zelensky urges Ukrainian partners to send air defense missiles from NATO stockpiles. This should not be a substitute for funding the prioritized Ukraine requirements list, right? Per, for you who don't know the long term, right? So prioritized, that is the P, Ukraine, that is the U, requirements, that's the R, and L is the list. Program under which arms are purchased from the United States, right? They need to emphasize on that, right? You need to get this money, US top negotiator, right? But should complement it. The president stated, "We continue to work together with Mark Rutte and all of our partners to maintain Euro-Atlantic cooperation," he added, referring to NATO plans to fund PER. But what is currently on our partners' stockpile should actually be working to protect Ukrainian airspace, Zelensky emphasized. Zelensky says he expects US response to Russian strikes, right, on their energy infrastructure after the proposed, remember the whole thing we talked about yesterday? We expect a response from the United States of America to Russian strikes, right? Again, just like Rutte bringing the forces into Ukraine, that will trigger a definite big strike. And now the Ukrainians, the president of Ukraine here is also, right, pushing for the Third World War, right? This was a proposal for from America itself to halt strikes on energy infrastructure amidst cold winter weather while the diplomatic process continues. That is not the whole fact, right? That was not the whole fact. The ceasefire, also called ceasefire, was for a given time and specific targets. He doesn't go into detail about that because he's disingenuous, right? What he wants is a exchange of firepower, right? There was a personal request from the U.S. president, right? Trying to, I don't know, incite or something, right? Trump responds. Putin kept his word. Trump about energy truce. It was Sunday, 25th January to Sunday, 1st February. And it opened up and he hit them hard last night, right? That means from 25th January to 1st February, that was the requested ceasefire, right? And not a whole ceasefire, but rather strikes on the energy infrastructure, right? Putin, kept his word on that. It's a lot. Right? French President Emmanuel Macron said on Tuesday preparation work was underway to restart direct discussion between Europe and Russia over the war in Ukraine, right? I don't know if people comprehend what these people are talking about. What kept them from talking, right? All of this talk for over all of these years, they've been talking about Russia does not want to negotiate and this and that, while they refrain themselves from talking to the Russians. So what? Are the Russians supposed to negotiate with themselves? And these are people playing with people's lives, you know. The Russian side considers consider it important to move to a truly significant issue, truly significant issues, including the resumption of direct air traffic, right? These are the Russians talking, right? Now let's see the other side and what it is saying, right? They're not addressing Ukraine because there is no common sense over there, right? But this is more of the US-Russia relation. The Russian side considers it important to move to a truly significant issues, including the resumption of direct air traffic and the return of our confiscated diplomatic property. Proposals have been sent to the Americans to remove these serious barriers on the way to the full restoration of relationship between Moscow and Washington. The ministry added that if the United States agree to restore relations with Russia, horizons of cooperation with us that they are very promising and beneficial, right? With the US, I don't know if it's also US, man. Above all, for them will open up to the Americans. Areas of cooperation include hydrocarbons, critical minerals and rare earth elements, Arctic cooperation, artificial intelligence, and space. I'm not gonna Sijato, is it? Said Hungary's case was based on three arguments. First, energy imports, right? These are the Hungarians responding to the warhawks of the EU pertaining to their supply of energy, right, from Russia. First, energy imports can only be banned through sanctions, which require unanimity. This regulation was adopted under the guise of trade policy measures, they said. Second, the EU treaties clearly state that each member state decides its choice of energy source and suppliers. But we are going to sit here and see all of these two, whatever you want to call them, be violated unless somebody fights back. Believe me, you. Third, the principle of energy solidarity requires the security of energy supply for all member states. The decision clearly violates that principle, certainly in the case of Hungary. Merz looked to Gulf ties to curb German reliance on the US. A 3-day trip to Arab Gulf states underscores Berlin's pivot to middle powers amid cooling ties with Washington and Beijing. Right? Ukraine strikes Russian homes with US-made missiles. Right? Just so you know, the current state of that was a lot, but it is what it is. Right? It's like a dose of highly potent and distasteful medicine from the trees. That's what that was, right? The contrast, right, of people who are actually serious for peace and those who want war, right? And how do you stop a person who wants war and preparing for war and has conducted war? How do you prepare for such a person? More war. You beat them to a pulp. Because if you let them, the damage will be much worse for everybody. That's just the reality, right? Now I've shown you where their minds are. We have seen. This is not even new information where we are right now, right? This is a pattern of behavior that is not new. It's quite familiar. This is why I'm against them, because they're genuinely not for peace. That is why I always stand with the Russians and the Chinese in whatever form of aggression they... Right? So this is not a block mentality or anything like that, right? If the Russians and the Chinese do something wrong, I'll be here to criticize it. If my government does something wrong, I'll be here to criticize it, right? That's what we have going on here. So yeah, I think they have not had enough. Let's just say that. But anyway, let me put a pin on it right there, and we're gonna hear from each other when we hear from each other. Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.